Thank you. Good evening and welcome to the City of Pasco's Council Special Workshop and Regular Meeting. The Council thanks you for being part of our city government. At a workshop, the Council only discusses issues with no formal action taken. The agenda packets are available at the City of Pasco's website at www.pasco-wa.gov/agenda. Please note that the City Council continues to meet remotely. The meetings may be accessed through GoToWebinar. This meeting is also being televised live on Channel 191 on Spectrum Cable in Pasco and Richland, and also streamed on the city's Facebook page, website, and YouTube channel. This and previous council meeting video is available on the city's website. Through Proclamation Number 20-28, Governor Inslee extended the directive making temporary changes to Open Public Meetings Act. These virtual meetings will continue until the OPMA restrictions are lifted. Lastly, the public may submit their comments and/or questions for items not on the agenda by contacting the city manager or city clerk or using the feedback form on the city's website. With that, can we get the roll call?
Great. Council members Alvarado.
Present.
Maloney.
Present.
Milne.
Here.
Roach. Councilmember Roach. Councilmember Serrano.
Present.
And Mayor Pro Tem Barajas.
Present. And our mayor, Saul Martinez, is excused for the evening. And with that, can you please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And tonight we have the introduction to the capital projects biennial budget for 2021 and 2022.
So good evening, Mayor, Council, and my apologies. I'm attending a little remotely tonight. I'm in my own office, kind of isolating. I don't really have an issue, but to be honest with you, I felt a little funny this morning. I got tested. I've been feeling great all day, but I erred on the side of caution. So I'm continuing to isolate till I get my test results tomorrow. Anyway, with that, so this evening it's again our pleasure to present part 2 of the preliminary 2021-2022 budget. As with the operating budget, I want to assure the council and the public there's plenty of opportunity to influence the plan going forward. That said, there's been a lot of work put into it to get it in the condition to where we can present it to you tonight. Similar to the operating budget, a lot of the same things, the adopted council goals, the national community survey and some of the conclusions from that, our listening sessions, as well as a lot of our utility comprehensive planning efforts and transportation planning efforts, parks plan, the urban growth area, boundary discussion and the future impacts of that to the city are driving a lot of what you're going to see tonight in the plan. As I shared with you in the public last week, financially, the total budget for the city budget, all funds, including all the capital improvement projects, is about $462.8 million. So, and a good chunk of that, I don't have that exact number right now, but a significant number of that, amount of that is the capital budget. So the philosophy behind the numbers from the on the infrastructure side, we're going to hear a little bit about that tonight. What's behind those numbers, the financing of the different projects, where the dollars are coming from to pursue this somewhat aggressive set of projects, we're going to talk a little bit about our completed projects, and we introduced the carryover discussion last week, and Finance Director Sigdell is going to get into that in much greater detail tonight. We're going to also have a snapshot of the health of all of our different funds. You get a sense of revenues as well as expenditures, and we'll have some fund balance discussion. And then, of course, we'll walk through a highlight of some of the major, more high-profile projects. So, this, as we discussed in operations, the infrastructure piece of this gets a little bit more attention, I think. Operations, I don't want to say attention, but there's probably more of an imperative to maintain a very aggressive stance. You heard me last week talk a little bit about some degree of caution on the operation side in that budget to make sure, with, you know, and take into account some of the unknowns we have with COVID-19. With infrastructure, one, the financing's a little bit more solid, and plus it's a much more long-term look than a 2-year look. And I can tell you, with infrastructure, waiting until things may or may not get better gets really expensive. We start to add to the cost, and the very thing we're concerned about, we wind up causing a problem with. So in terms of the biennial budget, going to our first slide, as mentioned in that process. There we go, thank you. We did have a little bit, you know, I won't go into a whole lot of detail, but we did have a little bit of a mix-up in terms of how we normally do our process because of COVID. And we have since been able to recently get our council goals completed. And in the process, we've also been able to move forward on the planning. You can see the capital improvement plan back in July was approved. The planning on that actually started much sooner. And as I mentioned to you last week, the CIP typically, you know, that we're looking at the first 2 years of a 6-year plan in your biennial budget. And that doesn't always match up entirely. I think largely we're there, probably 85 to 90% there. There's always the things we didn't know back in June and May and April when we were putting this together, and the things that have transpired over the past several months that gets us to today, that where you might see some differences. And certainly this year, even council goals happened to occur after the CIP budget or CIP plan was actually adopted. Next slide, please. So I went through the slide last week, and I want to mention it again because, like operations, there's a lot of reasons why folks would want the city back. The question being, if the city and its services were to go away tomorrow, why would the people want us back? Public safety, we don't often think of public safety in terms of infrastructure, but we've had some pretty significant projects in the public safety realm. Wasn't that long ago we were building a brand new police station, and we have a plan for a training center in our operating budget next year. So you're going to see a capital project on that at some point in time in the future. We're also in the midst of 2 major construction projects for new fire stations, as well as upgrades to 2 current ones that you're going to hear a little bit tonight about as well. And then the direct and safeguarding of public investment, capital improvement projects, strategic planning, economic development. Those all play into our infrastructure plan, and these projects all play into those areas. You know, it's extremely important we continue to invest in our infrastructure. Matter of fact, we're working with a major economic development project right now. Very detailed discussions about the capacity of our treatment facilities and conveyance facilities. So with that, I think the other thing driving this is planning for the future piece, and that kind of comes in 2 pieces when you stop and think about it. You know, it's easy to think about the new areas, and you're going to hear about a reservoir and a transmission main. But you're also going to hear a lot of projects that have to do with facilities that have been used up and worn out over the past decades. And it's time for those things to be rehabilitated and brought up to current standard. And so we have a number of those kind of discussions as well tonight. We talked a bit about, next slide, we talked a bit about already what's guiding the process. And I'll just note that I've discussed most of the points on the right, and the ones on the left we added since the presentation last week. Certainly we have our land use comp plan has some things to say about infrastructure, as well as the facility plans that we've been working on and the system plans in water, sewer, irrigation, parks also. So those are, again, some of the things that sort of drive this process.
Dave?
Yes.
I just wanted to let you guys know I made it back here. I had to sign out and sign back in because I didn't have any audio. So sorry to interrupt your presentation, but
Yep. Thank you for doing that. The clerk will note that you were here and that you had to come back in at 6:11. So you'll see some on the next slide. You'll see, again, the key themes that looks I'm sure familiar from last week. And we're going to talk a little bit tonight about Lewis Street overpass, but you're not going to see it in the budget because that's part of the carryover. We're going to talk, Lewis, you're not going to see all of it in the budget because a chunk of it's in the carryover. Wastewater, Butterfield, those type of big projects. Many of those we have actually seen in the 2019-2020 budget. They might have been in the design phase. They might have been the construction maybe split to where part of it's being completed this year and part next year. We just, matter of fact, council just approved a bid for overlay of Court Street not that long ago, and Wrigley, and we'll probably see those probably more finished in the 2021 budget than we are in the 2020 budget. So it's an ongoing iterative process, and those are the major drivers you see on there and what's at stake. The long-range planning piece, the growth, the rehabilitation piece, and economic development and quality of life. Those are two of the major byproducts of a good infrastructure system. Next slide, please. So I do want to just remind council, and we talked last week. We're adding the preliminary budget proposes to add 5 FTEs. 2 of those are just for the delivery. Our senior civil engineer and our civil engineer positions. They're just for the delivery of the CIP budget. A lot of projects, and we need staff to get those things out. We still need to hire consultants as well, and so I think it's just a good reminder, and wanted to chat a little bit about, or at least a minute, and connect people with the delivery of projects. And next slide. So with that, Director Sigdal is going to take it over. She's going to start to kind of walk us through some of the financing pieces of this. And then, as I mentioned, we'll get into a bit of a discussion on each of the projects or each of the major projects that are coming up.
Evening, Mayor Pro Tem Barajas and other council members. Welcome to the part 2 of our 2021-2022 biennial budget process. And overall, you've seen this slide quite a few times, but we feel that this really tells a good story in terms of how we think about capital budgets overall. And as usual, we're always looking for grants. And though they're not free money, they're definitely funding that would not come out of city's internal funds, and hence we can maximize those with our internal funds and get a lot of projects done. So our public works is always looking for grant opportunities for almost all of our projects first. After that, we're looking for, if grant opportunities are not available, low interest loans. Even with debt and some of the revenue bonds that we issue, They might be lower in interest. There's still lower interest loans to be found, and they're not as expensive in terms of issuance cost. And so we're looking for those. And then, of course, there's the bonds that we issue from time to time on a needed basis. Then there's current revenue, which is your current rates from our ratepayers. And there's the regular water sales rates, but then there's also something called the expansion fees. And those are what we would charge our new construction homes and commercial properties as well throughout the city, and they would charge to the system overall. And many times we are using those funds to expand our system, and that's kind of an idea of the growth pays for growth. And then in the budget itself, in the capital improvement plan, you would see a lot of unsecured funding. In the budget itself, we try to limit it, but we also try to be strategic about it. And so we sometimes we will include unsecured funding, and that might just be as simple as we have not issued the revenue bond yet, or sometimes it might be things that are in process and we never start a construction of a project till we have everything, all of its funding sources secured. So sometimes we will put it in the budget because we know that there's something that is forthcoming, or we're anticipating approval of a grant or a loan. But if that does not come to fruition and it is included in the budget, we still do not move forward with the project until we have identified some different source. So those are some of the process with which we fund our capital projects. Next slide, please. And in terms of, I just spoke to the capital improvement plan, and of course, capital improvement plan, or our CIP, is a 6-year outlook of all of the capital projects that as a city we would like to tackle. And it's also a good guide for us in terms of what are the things that need to be done to, say, accommodate growth or replace aging infrastructure. But capital budgets are a little bit more narrowly focused and more highly prioritized. And so we are looking at our capital plan and then looking at the 2 years and saying, okay, you know, do we have to do these projects? What's the plan? If they're fully funded, of course, they're going in, but of course, there's priorities within those projects as well. And so we're looking at that as well. Ideally, a capital budget is fully funded, but again, there is need to include things when they're either highly important projects like Lewis Street overpass to the council, and we know that we're going to fund them in one way or another, or those are projects that there's a very high likelihood that we're going to receive some sort of funding, outside funding. Next slide, please. These are some of the completed projects. I will not go through them. You've seen them quite a few times already, but just wanted to keep that in there so that if you wanted to look at it at a later time, it's available to you. And it's not an all-inclusive list, but I think we've covered fairly well. Next slide, please. Carryover. It's something we touched upon last week as a precursor to this meeting, and many of you are probably very well versed in carryovers of funding, and essentially the city has not adopted this for its capital projects, and we believe that at this point we're in a good place to start this practice, which is a business standard and a recommended practice. And we talked about why it would be of benefit to the city. And of course, it's the fact that project schedule does not line up exactly with a budget schedule. And we have been expending a lot of time trying to estimate things on how much we're going to spend by the end of the year, and trying to be efficient, but then also trying to give you the right information with budgets and making sure that some of our budget documents and numbers are clear. Carryover would make things a lot clearer for staff, I believe for council, and for our residents when they are looking at residents and bondholders, actually, when they're looking at our budget documents. Some of the things that are not a drawback, I would say, but council will have to approve a carryover capital budget at the end of the quarter next year. And that would just, we would bring it to you as a budget item. And the other part is that we do not really have electronic project budget system right now. And we're mostly working off of Excel sheets. And as you can see, we have a large capital project budget. And at this point, we recognize the need for a system essentially. So we're going to be combining our carryover process with an implementation of an electronic system. And I would say I would just ask for your patience in advance. There will very likely be a couple of iterations as we go through this process and realize maybe we missed something, we got something wrong. So you will probably see some of those items come through your agenda packets, very likely around March to June, July timeframe. Next slide, please. And speaking of carryover projects, you might think of, you might be anticipating some of the projects to pop up that we have not completed yet. And a big one is Peanuts Park. You will not see Peanuts Park in your 2021-2022 budget. And the reason for that is because we had enough funding authorized in this biennium. And so essentially by using the carryover process, we're going to, we do not need to include that in the next year's budget. And if we had not implemented the carryover process, essentially you would have seen $6-7 million. I cannot remember the exact funding for Peanuts Park right now, but $6-7 million in your biennial budget. And then we realized we cannot complete the project this year. And then we would have included that again in 2021 and 21-22 biennial budget as well. And that is a really good example of how sometimes some of these projects that are expanding over different budget years can sometimes make it look, the budgets look inflated. And so that is exactly what we're trying to avoid as well. Some of the other projects like the fire station relocation 83 is a full carryover project, whereas for 84, we do need an additional $3 million that we had not budgeted for this biennium, and so on and so forth for some of the other projects as well. At this point, I can keep going, but so please stop me and ask me if you have any questions. Next slide, please. We have talked about the bond proceeds for our LTGO bond, and Council has a good idea of where those funds are going. With our utility bonds, we also have the same level of projects. However, with utility funds, we have a little bit more leeway on how exactly we spend it. It still needs to be spent on capital projects, and we still need to deliver on the projects that we promised the bondholders to. But overall, we have a little bit left over from our 2017 revenue bond, which is about $3.5 million there. And then the 2020 revenue bond, which we issued this year, we have about $9.3 million left over. And these funds will be used to fund the projects for utility projects in the next biennium. Next slide, please. So this is our utility fund balance, and this is something our finance manager, Darcy Buckley, created. She has over 25 years of experience in utility accounting, and this is a very complicated area. So we're trying to make it as simple as possible for, I would say sometimes myself, but our council, other staff, and our residents to understand. So overall, in 2018, you will see close to $42-43 million in what is called a working capital, or essentially a fund balance. They can be used fairly interchangeably. And you see a big dip between 2018 to 20, and that's not a reason for concern. And the reason for that is because we have been delivering, our Public Works Department has been delivering on a lot of projects. And it is good to spend your fund balance to a certain extent to deliver projects in utilities. And the reason for that is because it makes it more equitable. So essentially, your current ratepayers who are using the system are also paying into depreciation, which is depreciation is essentially how when you, like your car, how it goes down in value more you use it. And so that's your depreciation cost. So over time, we've been using our utility rates to deliver on projects and replace aging infrastructure, which is a good thing. And then the other side of that is also issuing debt. And so debt works in a way that future utility payers will also be paying into that replacement cost. So it's good to mix both of those components together to kind of create an equitable environment as we are replacing our infrastructure. As you know, and as you will see, these are very expensive projects. And so we want to be as fair as possible. Next slide, please. So Arterial Street Fund is one of our funds. We talked about street overlay last week. Arterial Street Fund is another fund that we're used for transportation projects. And as you will see, it's a little bit all over the place, and that's a good thing because many times we will only use it to fund really big projects. So we try to build up the fund balance so that we can do a project like Lewis Street or Oregon Avenue, which is what we did in 2019 and 20. And so this year we're taking a little break. There's not as much expenses in this fund. And so we will save that fund balance and over the years, and then whatever next big project, wherever the need is, then we would be utilizing those funds there. Next slide, please. Same thing with park development. There was a large investment in building some of the parks like the Chapel Hill Park and some work with Road 84 in 19 and 20, and there was some work with 17 and 18 as well. And this year, there's very little work that is scheduled, and we will be saving some of that fund balance and looking out for some of the future projects like the community park that is in Council's CIP for future years as well. Next slide, please. And same with Capital Improvement Fund. Capital Improvement Fund is where all of our revenue from a REIT fund comes in, which is REIT fund is real estate excise taxes. So all of the taxes from that revenue source are included in this. There's some requirements on where those funds can be used. And essentially, it's mostly capital projects. And then there's some portions that we can use for maintenance. The city has historically only used it for capital project only at this point. And we had a lot of projects that were scheduled in last year's adopted budget in this fund. And this is a fund that we use for a lot of non-transportation related projects, like your parks, community center, fire station, things like that. Next slide, please. Okay, our biggest fund, and which is our utility fund, it includes different components like our water, sewer, irrigation, and stormwater services. And these are just the operational cost, and you will see some differential between your operational expense and your operational revenue. Now, this is the place where if you didn't have any capital projects, this would just go into your fund balance and you would be saving up on your reserves. You never want this, you always want there to be a certain amount of money to be left over from the money that is coming in for water sales or sewer sales, that you're not spending all of it. For the very reason that we just discussed earlier, which is that you want the rates to pay for some of the capital cost. And the ideal is about half and half, so that is really hard for a lot of jurisdictions to get to. especially because some of these projects are really expensive, and so you are getting to the end of the life cycle for maybe one of your sewer treatment plants, and then your water treatment plants needs help, and so those kinds of things. But the ideal is 50-50, and so that's the differential, and that's where a lot of the difference between your revenue and expenses would go to fund your capital projects. Next slide, please. Well, I will let Mr. Worley explain all of this, as we will be going into some of the individual projects that actually make up for this quite a bit of increase in the next biennium. Without trying to steal his thunder, I would say that a large part of this budget is coming out of our facility plans. Either they're completed or in the process. So we have projects that are slated, that are quite high dollar, and so there's about 3 or 4 projects that make up a big chunk of this. Next slide, please. And with that, I will pass on our project, some of our major highlighted projects, and pass this on to Chief Gear.
All right, thank you. Can we move to the next slide? So basically, we have a couple projects we're going to talk about. The ones that are probably the biggest ones we have going on and how they're funded. So next slide. So probably the biggest capital project we have going on in fire is the replacement of Station 84. Funding from that was secured from the 2019 LTGO bond. Estimated cost was about $8.9 million. It's going to be real close to that, or probably below, actually. And we're going to have a carryover of about $3 million into the 21 budget. And that project should be completed in August of next year. Next slide, please. Station 85. This is reaching out into the future and looking at what we're going to need to do for WSRB, the Protection Class 3 maintenance. And we expect to get a plan out soon to council, probably in the next few months on that. But securing that, we've secured the land for Station 85. We want to do the design of Station 85, which is going to cost about $500,000, and have that shovel ready. So at some point we can move ahead, especially if we get additional safer federal funded staffing to staff that station. Next slide. And Station 87 property, I know we skipped 86, but we don't know where that's going to go yet, but we know where 87 needs to go, somewhere in the area, the industrial King City truck stop area. We've been able to secure a deal with AutoZone to purchase a piece of property for $255,000 for about 2.2 acres. That's about half the price of properties going in that area. We're finishing up the details of that purchase, and we have a little extra in there to do the surveying and all the other work that needs to be done to split that 2.2 acres out of the northwest side of AutoZone. So unless there's any questions, that's what we're going to talk about with fire station CIP projects.
Okay, thank you, Chief. And for Parks and Facilities Project, this is Zach Rakai, ACS Director. As you can see, the ACS department has a small variety of projects slated for this budget cycle. Everything from substantial shoreline projects to trail development to continual marina improvements. So some of the highlights we see here, Sacagawea Levee Lowering Project. This portion of the levee runs from Wade Park west, out west along the Columbia River. It is one of the last portions of the original levee remaining on the river shore system. We are currently working through some engineering and design for the project and identifying grant funding sources to provide a share of the funding for this project. The Franklin County Irrigation District Trail, Phase 1 and 2. This has been an ongoing idea for a number of years, essentially to utilize the Franklin County Irrigation District easements, easements and pathway system for the underground canal as a regional trail system for recreation. Our current goal this year is to focus on land acquisition and identify construction costs for subsequent budget cycles. And the replacement of Dock B out at the Pasco Marina at the Pasco Boat Basin. This is essentially to replace the second dock out at Schlegel Park in the Boat Basin. Dock B was our older dock, and it was heavily damaged in 2019 during the heavy snowfall we experienced that winter. Our intent is to place a duplicate dock next to Dock A, which was finished and upgraded in 2019. That dock would continue to provide electrical and water hookups for users, as well as covered boat storage. This project has unsecured funding, or we don't have any funding for it, but we'll be looking primarily for grant funding and any other assistance we can in order to make this project possible. Once completed, the leases for the boat slips in this area can offset the costs of some of the project. In addition to that, we have ongoing boat ramp repairs and park upgrades in Schlegel Park as well, which is currently under design. And then finally, Highland Park is in the eastern part of Pasco on Broadway, east of Oregon Avenue. Recently, ACS has been working on improvements to that park, including the completion of a design for an improved restroom and storage facility to mainly be used by the primary tenant, Pasco Youth Football. The city owns land directly to the west of this, as you can see on the left portion of the visual there. And it's our intent to begin design on the addition of a fourth football field to this area and a new parking lot to help improve this facility. So the spending we would look at in this budget cycle would be mainly to explore design and feasibility for this project. And with that, I will turn it over to Public Works.
Good evening, Madam Mayor Pro Tem and council members. Steve Worley, Public Works Director. Thank you. We're going to continue with the projects for the Public Works Department. Like some of the other departments, we just have a few projects here and there scattered through each of the programs, but we're going to go over them real quick. As you can see here, these tables show how each of these projects tie to the council's goals that were set, and so each of the X's identify where these projects fit within those goals. So with that, we're going to highlight a few projects. Next slide, please. This is our biggest sewer project this year. It's our wastewater treatment plant improvement project, phase 1. This is the first of 2 phases. The plans for this project are 100% complete now and were submitted last Friday to Department of Ecology for approval. We have to have their approval before we go out to bid. So once we get that approval, we plan to put this project out to bid. The construction should start early next year and be completed in early 2020. And once both phase 1 and phase 2 projects are completed, the capacity of the wastewater treatment plant will just about double from a little over 5 million gallons per day to about 10 million gallons per day. Next slide, please.
Excuse me, 1 second. This is Councilmember Maloney.
Yes.
Can we go back 1 slide for just a second?
You bet.
So as we're going through this, I'm comparing it back to our the CIP we approved back in August, and just trying to get an idea of what's moving, what's changing. It looks like that project has significantly increased in cost compared to what we previously approved. It was 21.8 for the phase 1 wastewater treatment plant upgrades, and so has the cost just overall gone up, or I guess I'm not sure what happened here, because it looks like the near-term cost is about the same, but there wasn't expected to be any more than the amount $19 million in 21 and 22.
Oh, go ahead, Maria. I'll let Maria Serra, our CIP manager, answer your questions.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
Good evening. So there's been an increase in cost in the project, and the way we are trying to offset that increase is by an application to receive a low interest loan from Ecology. As we moved towards the end of the design, there were components that were necessary and that would allow for the adequate functioning of the facility that were overlooked at the beginning of the design.
And I might add that this is not uncommon. What we're seeing here is that when we put our initial cost estimates together, we don't know all the information that we know once we get the 100% design completed. Once the design's done, we know all the details. We use updated cost estimate based on previous projects. And so, yes, there is a slight increase. We are hoping that with the bids that we get, it's going to be a very competitive bid. And I don't know that we're going to reduce the cost significantly, but I think it will come in less than the estimated cost. The recent projects that we have put out to bid have all come in less than what the engineer's estimate has been for the most part. And so we're hoping that that will be the case here as well. And one of the things you'll notice about the 2021-2022 proposed project cost is that that number will increase with some of the carryover that was talked about earlier. Director Sigdale mentioned that, and this is what was planned previously. Some of the money we didn't spend this year because it took a little longer to get through the design process will carry over and increase that amount for 2021-22 budget.
Okay, I appreciate the explanation. One follow-up question is, does the changes made to phase one and the features that were missed in the original design, do those affect phase two at all?
I think it's going to be in the same situation. The estimates we have for phase two will probably be updated and revised. Whether those numbers will increase or decrease based on what's happening in phase one, that will be determined as we get into the final design of phase two. Obviously, the numbers we get on the bids for this phase one project, we will certainly use those numbers to prepare the estimate for phase two so that we get as accurate engineer's estimate as we possibly can.
Thank you. I guess what I was asking there was was any of the additional scope covered in phase two? And it sounds like no, that phase two is still what phase two is. Phase one is what phase one is. There's just some missing components to it. So thank you. I appreciate that explanation.
You bet. Next slide. So the next project is, I think most of you are familiar with. It's the Northwest Area Sewer Trunk Line Project. There's an item on the agenda later tonight for that, for the next meeting. This project is currently out for bid, and the bid opening is scheduled for this Thursday. This project is funded through an LID, and the city is paying for the upsize cost of the sewer pipe to serve areas outside of the LID. So we're excited about getting this project moving forward. Next project, please. The Northwest Area Lift Station is a project that connects with the previous project. It ties in with the Northwest Area sewer line, and this lift station supports new and future development in this area of the city. With these two projects completed, it will open up a vast amount of acreage for future development. The preliminary estimates for this are preliminary, and we are partnering with the developer on the design and the construction cost for this lift station. So there will be more information coming on this as we get further into that design and coordination with the developer. Next slide, please. The other sewer project is the Court and Sylvester Sewer Main Improvement. These are projects that will increase the size of the sewer main coming down these streets that lead to the wastewater treatment plant. With the growth that is planned in the north and the northwest areas of the city, these capacities in these sewer lines have to be increased. And so that's what this project is about. We do have an opportunity to possibly look at different routes to add capacity to the sewer system. And if we do go different routes, it may offer the opportunity to serve areas that are not currently served with sewer. So we'll be looking at that as part of this project as well. Next slide. And the last project we're highlighting is the Road 52 and Pearl Street lift station. This lift station is one that has been shown to council in the past. It's in the donut hole area, and it is being proposed for new development and future development in that area, and will provide great service and be able to help build that area out. Next slide, please. We're going to move on to the processed water reuse facility. As you can see, we've got a couple of very large projects on order. Let's go through each of those. Most of you have heard about the next project, which is the primary treatment or pre-treatment project. This is where we are looking at how to improve the reuse facility so that it can clean the water better and accommodate increased flows from processors. And so we're still working on the direction for that. And we'll bring more information back to you as it becomes available. Next project. The next project is the Columbia East Lift Station and Force Main project. The lift station, as you may recall, is completed. We're now working on the force main portion of it. We are looking at getting some additional funding from the federal EDA, the Economic Development Agency. We just got recent information today that may suggest that we are getting more money than what we had originally anticipated. So we're looking forward to getting that nailed down and moving this project forward. Next project. The next area we're going to talk about is the water. And as you can see by this chart, there are numerous water projects that are proposed for this next biennium. We'll highlight a few of them here now. The first one being the reservoir storage tank, which is identified in our water comprehensive plan. This water storage tank will help with the serving water to the north and the northwest area of the city. And this project is tied with the next project, which is the transmission main from West Pasco Water Treatment Plant to Zone 3. This is the water line that will bring water from the treatment plant up to that reservoir in the last project. And with these two projects, this will bring the ability to be able to serve all of the new development in the north part of the city easily. We can easily serve everybody with these two projects. Next project, please. The next one is Butterfield Treatment Plant improvements. We are currently going through a facility plan process right now that is identifying improvements needed at the Butterfield Water Treatment Plant. This plan is very old, and we are possibly looking at new technologies, expansions, and lots of improvements so that we can increase the capacity of this water treatment plant. There will be more information coming. Right now, we have a placeholder in the budget for a total estimated cost. I think as the facility plan gets more completed, those numbers will become more refined, and we'll be bringing that back to council for review. Next project. The next project is the West Pasco Water Treatment Plant improvements. You've heard about this one as well. It's going to add another bank of filters to the treatment plant. You can see the one bank of filters in there now. This project will increase the capacity of the plant from the current 6 million gallons per day to 12 million gallons per day. And the plant still has capacity in the future for another upgrade for another 6 million to bring the total to 18 million gallons per day. Right now, staff is working on looking at a drinking water revolving fund low interest loan to help pay for this cost or pay for the project. And one of the things that we're noticing on this project is as we're working our way through the design on the 30%, the cost of it seems to be greater than what was originally anticipated. But those increased costs may be related to improvements to this facility to accommodate future expansion, which would make it easier, or replace some of the existing equipment there that has been problematic for us. And there are some issues with our intake project, and we may be looking at ways to accommodate an issue that came up relative to that project. And so as we develop this project more, we'll be bringing back to council more information about this project. Next slide, please. This is an example of some of the smaller water main projects that we've identified in this next biennium. There are several water main extension and replacement projects. These projects will improve service to our customers and help reduce maintenance issues. That covers the water area. We're now going to move on to the transportation network. And as you can see in this next slide, we have, again, a numerous list of projects that we are proposing for this next biennium, and some of them are pretty major. The first one being the Lewis Street Overpass project. As City Manager Zabel mentioned last week, this project went out to bid on Tuesday last week, so that is a great milestone that has been reached. The bid opening for this project is scheduled for early January. We still have some coordination issues with the railroad that we have to work out, but we are moving actively forward with that, and we anticipate a very competitive bid on this project and are looking forward to getting this project started under construction. Next project, please. The next project is the Lewis Street corridor improvements. This is a design that will start next year. It's basically a safety improvement and a revitalization of the downtown area through improvements on Lewis Street. And the initial part of the project will be to connect the end of the Lewis Street overpass project with the improvements at Peanuts Park. And so we're very excited about this. This is going to get started this biennium, and we'll see how much the funding will get us. We think we're going to be able to get the majority of it done in with the funding we currently have available, and then we will continue to go after additional funding to complete it. Next project, please. And the third to last project is the Argent Road project. This project was broken up into 3 phases. The first 2 phases are shown here. The first one being the 20th Road 20 to Saraceno. That project is about ready to go out to bid. We're finalizing some information on that. And so that'll be under construction next year. And then also the intersection of Road 36 and Argent. We have some money available for that project, and we'll be designing the improvements for that intersection. The phase 3 of the project will be improving the roadway between these two. And we are funded for that project as well, but that construction falls outside of this biennium. So next project, please. This one is the Sylvester Street Safety Program. This project will improve the corridor for pedestrians, bicyclists, and motorists. It's kind of one of those complete streets projects. This will improve the corridor to make it more safe for all users of the roadway. And to give you an example of how fast some of these things change, this slide says that we have an unsecured state grant, and yet we just found out that we are being selected for a grant for this project. And so we're excited about that. We've submitted another grant for it as well, and we're hoping to get that one also. And the last project that we have identified is the pedestrian and bicycle access over I-182 at Road 100. And this project will look at making improvements to this interchange in order to provide safer pedestrian and bicycle access from the north side to the south side of I-182. So with that, I am going to turn it over to others to complete the rest of the presentation. Oh, these are mine. There are a few other projects that Public Works is doing. Stormwater projects, we've got several of those going on this next biennium. And then we also have some irrigation improvement projects that will increase the capacity of our irrigation system. So the next slide shows an example of one of the projects that we are doing, and that is to upgrade the capacity of some of our groundwater wells, which will be able to provide more irrigation water to our irrigation system. So with that, I will turn it back over to City Manager Zabel.
So thank you, Steve, and thank you, directors. Great presentation. Council, this concludes the formal presentation of our preliminary 2021-2022 operations and capital budget. Later tonight, council will conduct a public hearing for input on the proposal and also consider the first reading of the operating and capital budget ordinances. Staff plans to utilize next week's meeting, 11/23, to address any questions or issues raised by council or the public during the public hearing portion, with final adoption, second reading scheduled for council's December 7th meeting. In the meantime, I would encourage council, please feel free to contact either me or Director Sigdell if you have any questions, and we will run them down for you and try to get you answers so we can get this budget approved. So with that, any questions?
Are there any questions from any of our council members?
This is Councilmember Maloney.
Go ahead.
So my only question would be, so when comparing the overall bottom line from our CIP to the actual 21-22 budget, this is about, I don't know, $8 million, $9 million less than I believe was approved in the CIP. And as we saw, some of the projects have fluctuated in what our budgeted costs or expectations are compared to when we approved the CIP. I would really appreciate some sort of walkthrough of what got pushed and what didn't. Walking through and trying to manually do that in my book is tedious and error prone. So I can assure you that I've already made a number of mistakes in trying to, I got a little cross-eyed trying to compare those spreadsheets. So some help with that would be greatly appreciated, just so I understand what has changed in our position over the last like 4 months.
Okay, that's a great question. We can give you a little bit of a synopsis on that at your next meeting. We'll use the time for that.
I would just add that this year, because we're adding the carryover component, if it wasn't difficult already, it becomes a little bit more challenging. Looking for a little bit of clarity there, as in if you are looking to, are mostly interested in the total project cost, is that of the point of interest to you, Mr. Maloney?
So short answer is no. I mean, yes, but that's not specifically what I'm asking. What I'm interested in is some projects get moved back because of a variety of reasons. That's important, but understanding what the priority of those is our key, as I think are, from a city council's perspective, what our number one job is there is to understand what priority to the community and making sure that falls in line with what our expectations were and are. So we've already approved the CIP, so that's a good like line in the sand of here's what we knew a few months ago, and understanding how that's changed and how it reflects in the budget would really help me understand how the reality of what we now understand by the budget process differs from what our planning was during that process. And so just looking at that delta for me is a good way for me to understand what's changed and what's important.
The sum of 2021 and 22 in the CIP compared to those same years in this proposal.
Yeah, those are different, right?
What made up those differences? That's how I took your question.
Exactly. What projects got shifted out of the window altogether? What projects have increased in cost significantly, decreased? That sort of thing. Is that clear enough, Ms. Sigdell?
That's perfect. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Okay, are there any questions? Any other questions or comments from council? All right, sounds like there's not any other questions, and so we move forward. And I believe with that, we conclude our workshop meeting. Thank you, and then we move forward now to our regular meeting. Just a second. Okay, so we've already gone through our roll call, Pledge of Allegiance, and we will move straight into our agenda. All right. So first item on our regular agenda is item number 4, consent agenda. Does anybody have any questions on the agenda? Sorry. All items listed on the agenda on the consent agenda are considered to be routine to the City Council and will be enacted by roll call vote as one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items. If further discussion is desired by council members of the public, the item may be removed from the consent agenda to the regular agenda and considered separately. Was there any other comments?
This is Councilmember Serrano. I do want to call a note out that was added to, why am I not finding it? To the interlocal agreement for the tourism promotion area. I talked with City Manager Zabel, and again, this note was included, but I'd just like to call attention to it. It's under subsection V, discussion, where it says the cities of Richland and Kennewick approved the ILA on October 20th and November 3rd, 2020, respectively. That note was added because I had offered a suggestion that we may want to consider capping this increase of from $2 to $3 per night at a time certain, 2-year expiration, et cetera. But the city manager advised me that if we were to do that, we'd have to essentially ask these 2 other cities to rescind their decisions, and we'd have to kind of recommence the process. I am not in favor of that. So given what's happened with the other 2 cities, I fully support moving forward with it. I guess I just want to send out the soft reminder that we may want to reconsider this when we have economic recovery.
Okay, so do we move that into a separate item?
No, we don't need to move that into a separate item. I just wanted to call the attention to that to, give a little bit more base to that note.
Noted. Thank you. All right, and so we move on to item A, the approval of meeting minutes.
And you can ask for the motion for the entire, all 6 items.
I'm trying to find mine. Here it is. And can I get, sorry, I'm trying to get into my agenda here. Can I get a motion to approve the meeting minutes held on November 9th from 2020?
This is Councilman Alvarado. I move to approve the consent agenda as read.
Is there a second?
Councilman Serrano.
If I can make a point of order here, we haven't read the consent agenda yet, and without reading that out, I'm not sure I'm comfortable voting to approve the consent agenda as read if it hasn't yet been read.
Duly noted. Item A, approval of meeting minutes. To approve the meeting minutes, like I said, of Pasco City Council remote meeting held on November 2nd and remote workshop meeting held on November 9th. Item B, bills and communications, to approve claims in the total amount of $2,126,942.06, and to approve bad debt write-off for utility billing, ambulance, cemetery, general accounts, miscellaneous accounts, and municipal court. And I believe that's it. Move forward to item C. And item C, resolution Second Amendment to interlocal agreement for tourism promotion area. Item D, resolution of Washington State Department of Natural Resources easement for Columbia East Forest, Maine. Item C, resolution communication site license agreement with AT&T, the water tower. And lastly, item F, Shiawana Park Riparian Shoreline Project Memorandum of Understanding. With that, we've had a motion from Councilmember Alvarado and a second by Councilmember Pete Serrano. Do we all agree? And we will move forward. Was there a comment?
I'll do a roll call vote for that. Ready? Councilmember Serrano,
Yes.
Councilmember Alvarado,
Yes.
Councilmember Maloney,
Yes.
Councilmember Milne,
Yes.
Councilmember Roach,
Yes.
and Councilmember, Mayor Pro Tem Barajas.
Yes.
Great.
I apologize. There's some residual noise that I thought someone was talking. Okay, and we move forward to item number 5, proclamations and acknowledgements. There are none. Item number 6, reports from committee and officers. Do we have any verbal reports from any of our council members?
This is Councilmember Alvarado.
Yes, council member.
Yeah, I just wanted to report about a special meeting and a regular meeting that happened last week for manufacturing transit. We're continuing to move ahead, and nothing too exciting happening outside of the things that have already been reported. But still, there's a obviously there's a lot to figure out with this COVID situation about ridership and things like that. But the organization is well, and just want to report that. Also, I concluded a committee that I was a part of. We had a 4-month equity work group meetings that were happening for our Association of Washington Cities, and so I represented the city of Pasco on that, and we gave some good recommendations for AWC on how they can move forward with equity. I guess in their training, in some of their practices, and so I was proud to represent Pasco with other council members and mayors from around the state.
Great, thank you for sharing that. Anyone else? Hearing none, we move on to item number 7, hearings and council action on ordinances and resolutions relating thereto. And we do have a public hearing for the public access vacation of the Pasco Coke LLC property vacated, and I believe we have Michelle Long. Okay, so before opening the public hearing, I will ask staff to provide a brief report related to the topic.
Good evening, Madam Mayor. This is Steve Worley, Public Works Director. Madam Mayor Pro Tem, thank you again. This is an item that I presented to council a couple weeks back, or 3 weeks back, and this is related to a public access easement that is across the Coca-Cola property. And there have been issues related to the use of that. The easement has not been identified on the ground, and we are proposing to fix that problem. In doing so, and in coordination with Coca-Cola, they have requested that we relocate the easement to the south a little further, because some of the trucks that they use to deliver products to their warehouse are longer than the ones you see in this photo. And so they extend into the existing easement. So in order for the city to relocate the easement further to the south, we need to vacate the existing easements that are there, and then subsequently grant new easements from Coca-Cola. and that is being proposed. But in order to meet the Pasco Municipal Code, in order to vacate a public access easement, a public hearing must be held to take public comment. And so that's what tonight's item is about. There are no actions related to this item, but in order to meet the municipal code, we're having a public hearing and taking public comment. And yes, Michelle Long is here with us this evening, and she has some comments that she would like to make related to this issue.
Thank you.
Be happy to answer any questions.
Michelle?
Hi, everybody. Hi. I've got, the whole thing with Coca-Cola is a very complex thing. It's impacted the whole neighborhood. It's from everything from noise to traffic, pedestrians and vehicles trying to cross the trucks and stuff. I'm trying to see this. When you look at the picture that you first placed up about Coca-Cola, the trucks, when they come off of Road 34, stack up right against there. So it makes it very difficult, even if you have easements, to be able to have vehicles and, yes, right where it's Henry Street and Road 34. As they come into just right into the Coca-Cola thing, they stack up right there. I did, on that first page 1, show pictures of how the trucks come in. If you move, I think this is a Band-Aid thing. I think if you move the easement back to accommodate those larger trucks, you're going to put more noise back into the neighborhood. And as you can see on my report that I sent, our noise decibel levels are way over what is allowed by the city. Yes, that's as the trucks come in. And we've had, people can't see around the trucks, so we've had numerous almost hits. There have been some accidents, but not as much as what I thought was going to happen. We've been fighting this for 3 years. As you can see on that page, you can see pedestrians, bicyclists. We've even had motorized wheelchairs by a Vietnam vet. We have got senior citizens that are disabled that go across that parking lot. We need something that's going to be safe for everybody. Even the easement is not going to make it safe because the trucks are still going to have to cross it to get into the lots or get back into the dock. That page 4, that's how close those trucks are to our house, to our homes. They start up at 3:30 to 4 o'clock in the morning. So you're pushing those trucks all back to us. Yeah, page 5 is the decibel readings. It's up to 76. They run about between 51 to 76 most of the time. So this might be, if you do it, I would say you need to do it for a short time so you can get with the only solution that I see, because we have to have an access to this mobile home park. The only access I can see is to go buy the land between Corwin Ford, just a strip of land between Corwin Ford and Coca-Cola, which is already paved. I know Corwin Ford wants $1 million and a archway and all kinds of stuff. I think you should do the eminent domain because they're not willing to negotiate and give them a fair price and get a safe place. I think it's money well spent because you're going to have legal ramifications when somebody gets injured. So I can't sell my home. I can't sell it. I would feel very bad to sell my home to somebody else that's going to have to put up this noise. They can't get out of our park to get help or get emergency people here. So I'm asking that if you do this extension or change the easements, that you please, please, please change it to by that road, get us to Margaret Street, or Marie Street. So we'd come out from Henry to Road 32 to Henry to Marie Street to access Road 34. So if you could please let me know if that could happen. We aren't going to go away. We've been fighting this for 3 years. The councilman, David Milne, has been awesome. He has a lot of my texts. Actually, numerous city officials know our predicament here. Anyway, that's pretty much my presentation. I just really hope that you fix our problem, please.
Thank you.
Should have never happened.
Thank you, Michelle, for bringing this forward. So in a public hearing, we don't take any decisions today. It's something that the council then takes forward to staff, and we will get back to you as soon as there's a solution to this. Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak on this?
Would that be council getting to speak, or are we talking other individuals?
Go ahead, Mr. Milne.
Okay, I was echo what Mrs. Long had talked about, and also to chime in as far as I've also noticed when school was in session that we've noticed kids also walking by and the trucks pulling out, and it was just good fortune that the truck didn't hit the kids. I would agree 100% that this is a Band-Aid, but we would like to see more of a realignment, and I know Mr. Worley is working on this as well, but to just totally avoid the GO facility and have the road go either north or somewhere else. But it is going to be an issue, and I'm very worried that eventually somebody will get hit, just because when you have a facility like this, you're going to have a lot of trucks moving, and it's hard to see everything that goes on. So I'd just like to echo Mrs. Long's statements that this is a Band-Aid, but we hope that we come with a permanent solution where this is totally taken care of. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Milne. And with that, I'm going to close the public hearing. Now we'll ask for a motion from council.
Madam Mayor Pro Tem,
Yes.
I don't think there was an action item for this other than conducting the public hearing.
You are correct. And so second call for any comments related to this topic. Third call for any comments related to this topic. Okay, and with that, we close the public comment section.
Madam Mayor, if I could jump in here.
Yes, go ahead, City Manager Dave.
Yeah, okay, so thank you, and Council and Mayor Pro Tem, we've had our public hearing on this now, and what this is ultimately about is a vacation of one easement in favor of another. And I think all of us recognize basically what's at hand here is making a less than desirable situation safer than it is today. And that's really about all it amounts to. It's about getting striping down. You can see some signing out there that alerts drivers to some stationary objects, as well as the curve that's going to be put in for the center line of the street, and some delineation for both folks driving out there as well as folks walking out there. It's not going to make the noise go away, and it's not going to resolve a lot of the issues that I think the surrounding neighborhoods particularly Riviera Trailer Park, is dealing with right now. So staff recognizes this is there's a longer term solution that we need to keep looking for. The Corwin piece may be a part of it. There may be opportunities to the south as well. We've looked at those in the past. We don't have the answers to those right now, but I think we can at least make the situation safer for the community and for the drivers themselves and for the Coca-Cola plant. And I think that's probably our first step and the only step that we can really take definitively at this point in time. And so we plan on coming back with you, to execute that agreement. And at that point in time, we would proceed forward with vacation of the one easement simultaneously to approval of another by the property owner. So one wouldn't disappear without the other one happening. And then from there, we would follow on with the striping and signing as Director Worley's presented.
Great.
This is Councilmember Alvarado.
Yes, go ahead, Councilmember Alvarado.
Not needing an answer today, but perhaps if we can have a little bit more information. We know that some of the concerns are not necessarily staying into this specific fix, but perhaps it might be of interest to be able to have a little information on if there's some restrictions that as far as operations, times of operation, and things like that that folks that Coca-Cola may have. I think that might be something I'd be interested in, just knowing if that's the case, but not necessarily right now, just in the future.
We can do that.
Thank you.
This is Councilmember Maloney.
Yes, go ahead, Councilmember Maloney.
Yeah, I'd echo certainly what Mr. Milne said earlier regarding in terms of safety and how this is done. I wouldn't mind a history lesson at some point in time, possibly offline, as to how this happened in the first place, because we've seen it, especially in this area and further east, where past decisions have been made to allow industrial to abut residential, light commercial or heavy commercial to be, right across the street from residential property. And this is obviously, I don't think anyone would recognize this as good city planning. And what I'd like to make sure we understand is, kind of how did this happen? Because I want to make sure that I don't ever let something like this happen while I'm on council. It's terrible. I've seen this. I've driven past there, and this is bad. I can't even find better words to say that this is awful for people who have to live around this. And yes, this does look like it's better than what we had before, but marginally so. And I appreciate Mr. Worley having answered previous questions I had about whether this actually improves safety or not. And I appreciate that it does do some incremental fix. But by and large, I just want to make sure that while we do our best to fix a bad situation in the future, I don't find myself in a position where I don't understand that I may be creating a situation like this. So I appreciate that sort of at some point in the future, either offline or in a workshop meeting sometime in the future.
Happy to accommodate that. And I would just say, without getting into the details, this one was many, many years in the making. So.
Great, thank you for that. And yes, I definitely agree. We do need to find a healthy, safe solution for the situation. Okay, so we will now move forward to item number 8, relating to ordinances and resolutions not relating to hearings.
We have one more public hearing.
Yes, we do. I take that back. I'm going back up. We do have one more item for public hearing, and that is the operating and capital projects budget ordinance first reading. And we have Director Sigdow.
Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. No updates at this point. We've been through some of our operational budgets and as well as the capital budget today. And as City Manager Zabel mentioned, about $362 million. And that figure, important to note, includes fund balances or our reserves as well. It is customary to include those amounts when adopting budgets. You have, the council members have received the budget book as well. And that goes into further details of what is included within the budget. And so far, no changes to the budget at this moment.
Great, thank you. And so we will now open a public hearing and open for comments regarding our budget ordinances for the first reading. Does anyone else wish to speak?
There was no one scheduled to speak.
Perfect. Second call for comments and third call for comments. And with that, we close the public hearing. And can I get a motion, please?
This is Councilmember Maloney.
Go ahead, Councilmember Maloney.
I move for the first reading of ordinance number 4503 for consideration of the City of Pasco Biennial Operating Budget for 2021 and 2022.
Perfect, thank you. Do I get a second?
Serrano, I'll second it.
Perfect, thank you. I have a motion by Councilmember Maloney and a second by Councilmember Serrano. And we have a second.
Looks like there's a second motion which I can make. This is Councilmember Alvarado. Says I move for the first reading ordinance 4504 for a consideration of City Pasco Biennial Capital Projects budget for 21 and 2022.
This is Councilmember Roche. I'll second it.
And then we need to go back and have them vote.
And so we have a motion by Councilmember Alvarado and a second by Councilwoman Roach. Okay, and all in favor of approving the 2021-2022 operating and capital projects budget ordinance? Would you all please say aye?
Aye.
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 Sorry, I forgot that. And it passes unanimously.
Mayor Pro Tem Bras.
Oh, is that Eric?
It is, yes, it is.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, so there was two separate motions, is that correct? And then there was one vote?
That is correct.
Okay, yeah, each motion needs to be voted on separately. So that after the first motion and there was a second, we need to vote on that. And then we can do the same thing for the second one.
Perfect. I will go back to. So we just approved the first one, and okay, and now we're going to go back to all those in favor to the 2021-2022 operating capital projects, but project ordinance first reading. Ordinance number 4504. And can I get an aye? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, and we move forward to item number 8, ordinance and resolutions not relating to hearings. Item A, resolution, Basin Disposal Incorporated Overview of Services 2021 rate increase. And Mr. Worley.
Good evening again, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. This item is related to our agreement with Basin Disposal. And this item is to review the proposed 2021 rate increases as provided in the information in your packet. Council can see that we have a 15-year agreement with Basin Disposal, or BDI. And as part of that agreement, there are allowances for rate increases due to increases in the CPI index, increases in tipping fees as well. And so this year we received a request from BDI asking for an increase based on those items, as well as a third item of an increase in the state B&O tax that increased from 1.5% to 1.75%. The total rate increase being proposed for this is about 1.56% increase. And so it takes a standard residential 96-gallon container price from $21.28 per month to $21.60 per month. And the council approved a subcommittee of council to review the information in this BDI packet, and they have agreed that it looks fair and reasonable. And therefore, staff is recommending that this item be approved and the rate increase for BDI be approved starting January 1, 2021. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions from our council members? If there are none, then can I get a motion?
This is Councilmember Alvarado. I move to approve Resolution 4012, authorizing the 2021 Basin Disposal Service rate as proposed.
And can I get a second?
It's Councilmember Maloney. I'll second that.
Thank you. It's been moved by Councilmember Ruben Alvarado and seconded by Councilmember Maloney. All in favor say aye. We don't need a roll call.
Aye.
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 Thank you. And we move forward to item B, ordinance Nelson Trust rezone And we have Director White for this one.
Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. And yes, this is a rezone request for 1 acre. It's just on the east side of Road 84 as Court Street turns north in this vicinity. The applicants have applied for the rezone to subdivide the 1 acre parcel into 2 lots. And the application for this rezone was considered by the Pasco City Hearing Examiner in October, and the hearing examiner has forwarded a recommendation of approval, and there have been no appeals of this recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any comments from any of our council members? If there are none, and can I get a motion?
Councilmember Alvarado?
Oh, go ahead, Alvarado.
Yeah, I move to adopt ordinance 4505 rezoning a parcel located at 2217 Road 84 from RS20 to RS12, and further authorize publication by summary only.
Can I get a second?
I'll second that. This is Councilmember Milne.
Great, and so we have a motion by Councilmember Alvarado and a second by Councilmember Milne. And all those in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you. And that has been approved unanimously. We move on to item C. Ordinance Solano rezone R3 to an R4. And again, we have Director White for this one.
Again, thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. And this rezone request actually takes place just north of City Hall here, east of the roundabout on 3rd Avenue. The current zoning is R3, which is multifamily residential. The applicant and the owner have requested a rezone to R4. Eventually, he intends to develop a multifamily complex at this site. And once again, the Pasco hearing examiner conducted a public hearing in October and has forwarded a recommendation of approval. And there have been no written appeals of that recommendation.
Great, thank you. Do we have any comment from any of our council members?
Yes, this is Councilmember Maloney.
Yes, go ahead, Councilmember Maloney.
In the spirit of our earlier conversation regarding the Coke warehouse, is this going to potentially cause any issues that have not yet been foreseen in terms of traffic flow and such? I mean, obviously it's right next to commercial. It's with the roundabout there. Is this going to be future traffic concerns, Mr. White? How is or is that going to be resolved at a later date after this rezone?
Thank you, Mr. Maloney. And yes, this will be a project level discussion. The factors weighing in favor of the rezone request are, of course, its proximity to commercial services and public services and the arterial street system. But yes, specific transportation issues relative to the dwelling unit count will be done at the project level. At the current zoning of R3, it's approximately 50 units. At the proposed R4 zoning designation, again, at the maximum, it would be approximately 100 units. It's anticipated that that's accomplishable by the existing transportation system.
Thank you, Mr. White. I look forward to seeing more on that in the future.
Thank you for that. If there are no other questions, can I get a motion?
This is Serrano. I'll make a motion. I move to adopt, of course, my iPad. Ordinance number 4506, rezoning a parcel of land located at 909 North 3rd Avenue from R3 to R4 and further authorize publication by summary only.
Thank you. I have a motion. Do I get a second?
This is Councilmember Milne. I'll second that.
Thank you. We have a motion by Councilmember Serrano and a second by Councilmember Milne. All those in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. And we move forward to item D, resolution to the PWRF embankment repair construction contract with Apollo Inc. And we have Director Worley.
Good evening, Mayor again, and council members, Mayor Pro Tem and council members. This item is to get authorization to enter into a construction contract for the repair of an embankment at the reuse facility. Earlier this year, we had a failure of that berm where it was a berm in between two different storage ponds, and it failed, and staff was able to get the repair done immediately so that it can get back operational, at least one of the ponds, which was critical for our continued operation of the facility. And so we have been working with designers and ecology and PWRF staff on coming up with a solution. And we have decided that because there is a need to get this repair work done as quickly as possible, and we recently had some work done out at the reuse facility for the irrigation pump station by a contractor named Apollo, that they were on site, had knowledge about the repairs that were needed, and were readily available. We asked if they could give us a price to do this work. Because the PWRF qualifies as a pollution control facility, we are able to bypass the public bid process and go straight to a contractor. And so we have a price for this work, and we are asking council approval to allow the city manager to enter into this agreement so that we can get started on repairing this berm as quickly as possible. We are in need of getting it repaired because one of the ponds that will need to be used shortly is one of the storage ponds, which will begin accepting water sometime early next year. We are currently shut down from putting water on the fields, or we will be by the end of this month, and we will need those ponds for storage of flows coming from each of the processors. So staff is recommending that this item be approved for city manager signature, and be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions from any of our council members?
Yes, this is Councilmember Maloney.
Go ahead, Councilmember Maloney.
Thank you. My question is in regards to the brief explanation as to why this failure was caused. This says in the report that it was caused by a newly installed overflow pipe and erosion that we were seeing around that. So can you expand on that a little bit more? It always worries me when I see work being done on a facility like this to causing not quite, but nearly $1 million worth of repair work. And so I use a little more digging into what exactly happened, and obviously we have to fix it. I'm not disputing that, but I'd very much like to understand why this situation occurred to begin with.
Yeah, you bet. As part of the operation of the reuse facility, it was identified that, and actually as part of the IPS work and the work that was going on in the larger pond that's out there, the 115 million gallon pond, it was determined that we needed to have an overflow pipe installed from the 8 million gallon pond to the 35 million gallon pond in order to operate safely this year while the work on the IPS and the 115 pond was being completed. And so the pipe was installed, And one of the things that we didn't anticipate was the amount of stress on the weld between the liner and the overflow pipe. And as the water in the 8 million gallon pond rose up to the overflow pipe level, that's a level higher than it's ever been before. It actually stretched the liner more than we anticipated, and the weld, the plastic weld around the pipe came apart, and that opened up an opportunity for water in the pond to leak past the liner and into the embankment. And so that's what caused the failure. And so that issue is being addressed as part of the repair, and we're sure that that situation won't happen again.
So if I understand correctly, even if we had fully foreseen this beforehand, there would have been a significantly increased price. There would have been an increased price originally to make some fixes to the liner or otherwise with the pipe to handle this increased load that we obviously didn't expect, but if we hadn't expected, we would have been an increased cost then as well. So a portion of this would have been an incurred cost even if it's foreseen this then.
There would have been a higher cost to do that overflow pipe installed than what was originally done. Yes, there would be.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for that. And are there any other questions or comments? If not, can I get a motion, please?
This is Councilmember Maloney. I move to approve resolution number 4013 and further authorize the city manager to execute the construction contract with Apollo Inc. for the PWRF embankment repair project.
This is Councilmember Roach. I'll second that.
Thank you. We have a motion by Councilmember Maloney and a second by Councilwoman Roach. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Same sign. And it passes unanimously. Thank you. Moving forward to item C, resolution bid award for Road 36 lift station upgrades project. And again, Director Worley.
Thank you again, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. This item is, I'm going to turn it over to our CIP manager, Maria Serra.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and council members. So what we're bringing to you tonight is the award for the Road 36 lift station project. This is the fourth lift station project that completes a series of projects identified in the 2014 sewer comp plan. In this case, this project consists of the replacement of pumps in the lift station itself and some improvements, actually the replacement of the force main to upsize it from 6 inches to 8 inches towards the connection to the gravity sewer main south of the location of the lift station. We opened bids. This was a rebid. We had bid this project earlier and we had received bids that were too high, and we had reason to believe that it was adequate to rebid it later in the year. So we took this item to you, and that's how we move forward. We re-advertised this project later in the year. We received 2 bids. They were lower than the original 2 bids that we had received previously. And in this case, the lowest bidder who was responsible and responsive was Pipe of Washington Contracting. And their bid is slightly higher than our engineer's estimate, but still lower than the original bids we received earlier in the year. And with this, I could answer any questions you have.
Do we have any questions or comments by council? Great. If there's no questions, can I get a motion, please? Can I get a motion?
This is Councilmember Alvarado.
Go ahead, Councilmember Alvarado.
See, we're on item E, right? Let's make sure I got the right one.
Yes.
All right, I motion to approve resolution number 4014 awarding the Road 36 lift station upgrades project to Pipe of Washington, POW Contracting, Inc. of Pasco, Washington, in the amount of $593,684.81, including Washington State sales tax, and further authorize the city manager to execute the contract documents.
Great. Can I get a second?
Councilmember Maloney, I'll second.
Thank you. I have a motion by Councilmember Alvarado and a second by Councilmember Maloney. All those in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed, same sign. And it passes unanimously. Thank you. And we move forward to item F, resolution NW Sewer LID number 151 easement purchase. And again, we have Steve Worley, Director Steve Worley.
Good evening again, Mayor Pro Tem. This last item for Public Works anyway is for the acquisition of the necessary sewer easement across Mr. Dale Adams' property for the construction of the Northwest Sewer trunk line as part of LID number 151. This easement has been identified. It's right over the alignment of the proposed sewer. It includes two easements. One is a permanent easement that is, I believe it's 40 feet wide. And the second easement is a temporary easement that allows the contractor permission to work on the property and be able to build the sewer line. And so there is also one other segment of the easement that is related to a force main that is proposed from a neighboring property. You can see that on the map that's on the screen. The red solid lines are the permanent easement for the main sewer line. The dotted red lines are for the temporary construction easements. And then the blue solid lines are the easement for the force main that will be from the sewer lift station that was talked about previously under the capital projects for the biennial budget. And so we had an appraisal done of the value of the property. We presented an offer to the property owner. The property owner countered, and the counter offer was reviewed and determined to be acceptable. And so we are recommending approval from council to proceed with the purchase of this sewer easement. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for that, Director Worley. Do we have any questions or comments by council members? Great, hearing none. Do I have a motion?
Councilmember Alvarado, I move to approve the resolution number 4015 authorizing the city manager to execute the easements agreement for the Northwest Area Sewer LID project.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
Serrano, second.
Thank you so much. I have a motion by Council Member Alvarado and a second by Council Member Serrano. All those in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed, same sign. And that passes unanimously. Thank you. And we move on to item 9, unfinished business. And we do have one item here, and we have Director Zach Rakai.
Yes, good evening. Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem and Council. Good evening, Zach Rakai, ACS Director. As we discussed last week, the city's fireworks contract is still in effect till the end of the year. At last week's meeting, staff sought input on holding a fireworks display on New Year's Eve or canceling the fireworks until July 4th, 2021. Last week, staff did recommend cancellation of this year's fireworks contract and postponement of a fireworks display in the city of Pasco until next July. As discussed at the workshop, council did want additional information on events being held, any cooperative events that could happen on December 31st. So staff got to work over the last week. Staff reached out to neighboring property owners, businesses that would put on festivals to see if a shared event was feasible. In addition to that, we also talked to our partner cities of Richland and Kennewick as far as what their plans were on New Year's Eve. As far as staff reaching out to neighboring businesses and property owners, at the time of this meeting, we didn't really get any tangible response from them. We did have a great discussion, however, with our partner cities. Richland currently has no plans to put on an event specific to New Year's Eve. Kennewick does put on a first night event, which perennially each city contributes, whether it's in-kind services or monetarily, in order to sort of provide a focused, regional, safe family event on New Year's Eve. This is held at the Carousel of Dreams down at Southridge. In our discussions with Kennewick staff, they do have a fireworks display at 9 p.m. However, they are going to be utilizing their fireworks contract, which has already been planned and under contract for the event. So it wouldn't really be likely that our fireworks display could be an in-kind contribution to this regional event. However, we did see last week that members of council really wanted to see what sort of events we could put on at the end of the year, really to cap off 2020 and whatever type of year anyone has had with this. And so we do have Recreation is actually planning 2 big events in December. And Winterfest, which, as council can recall, is usually a single-day event held on the first Saturday of December. This will now, due to COVID gathering restrictions, be a week-long event beginning on December 5th with the lighting of our heritage tree, where we would normally gather in Volunteer Park. This will be a virtual tree lighting ceremony televised on Facebook, PSC-TV, and YouTube. That week, from December 5th to 11th, we'll be hosting a scavenger hunt with different locations posted daily on our social media, on our Facebook and our Instagram pages. December 7th through 11th, we'll have a number of do-it-yourself crafts for kids or the kids at heart in the community to come by and pick up and share and tag the city on social media. That'll be available 8 to 5 p.m. for contactless pickup here at Pasco City Hall. On December 11th, staff has been hired on as Santa's helpers to help coordinate the mailing of the letters as well. So that'll be the last day that Santa's letters can be mailed out. And then on December 9th, 2020, we are planning a drive-through holiday event. The details of that will be released very soon. So the week of December 5th through 11th, we're taking our one-day Winterfest and expanding it out a week, really to have the community involved in some things. We're going to still light the heritage tree and still be able to celebrate winter and have a couple more days, but still meet the restrictions that we have under the Stay Home, Stay Safe proclamation from the governor. The other perennial event we put on in December is the Lamson Cable Bridge Run. So far, and not necessarily knowing what our new restrictions will be, if they will continue beyond December 14th or not, we are planning a hybrid event with a staggered start of actual runners running the course in small groups to meet COVID gathering restrictions. And we're also looking at a virtual self-race where runners can run the race course or run an equivalent set of miles and then check in through social media saying that they've done the virtual Lamson Cable Bridge Run race. Throughout the year, we've done a Columbia River Run and we've done a virtual Pasco to the tip of Mount Rainier Run, which saw a lot of participants and great social media involvement. And so we do have that plan to keep the Lamson Cable Bridge Run tradition going. In addition, I mean, our recreation staff's really been working hard for the city. It's been, we've had staff relocated to assist with the closure of City Hall. So they're assisting in shipping and receiving, procurement, storage, distribution of personal protective equipment for city staff. Some recreation staff has been directly allocated to help with municipal court and customer service. In addition to that, just with our reduction in operations that we were required to reduce, we don't have our part-time service help as well to help put on a new event in December. So with events already being planned, such as Winterfest and the Cable Bridge Run, as well as staff's dedication to help interdepartmentally during the pandemic, and also with the new restrictions on gathering that Governor Inslee issued yesterday, that sunset as of now on December 14th. We really don't know what the gathering restrictions would be on December 31st. Staff still recommends that the fireworks contract unfortunately be pushed to 2021 and hopefully held at a well-attended, robust, and popular Grand Old 4th of July event. So we do have some exciting things to cap off the year, but I'm here to take any questions or comments of council on this particular item.
Any questions or comments from council members?
Yes, Councilmember Maloney.
Go ahead, Councilmember Maloney.
Thank you. Yes, obviously I was excited about the prospect of seeing some loud explosions to send this year off with. But I certainly appreciate, Mr. Rakai, the events that we have going on, the need for those to be supported and well maintained by staff. So 2020 has been a year of so many disappointments, and we'll just chalk this up to one more on my list. So thank you for your hard work and your staff's hard work on putting together meaningful and creative events for this community to still celebrate our winter season. Thank you.
Any other comments by any of our council members? Sounds like there's none. I do have a question though. You have here option 1, continue to hold the fireworks on the 31st. That's not an option because of the restrictions. But option 2 here is a little concerning. If we push it forward to July, we forfeit the deposit, correct?
Yes, that is correct. The contract in total is $28,000 for our 4th of July event. We do have to hold this by the end of the calendar year, or we do forfeit a $7,000 deposit. So we would be out the $7,000.
I see. Great. No other comments by council members. Can I get a motion?
Councilmember Alvarado, I move to direct staff to cancel the 2020 fireworks contract, electing to move forward with the July 4th, 2021 date under a new contract, and I do so regrettably.
Thank you for that, Councilmember Alvarado. Can I get a second?
This is Serrano. I'll second it.
I have a motion by Councilmember Alvarado and a second by Councilmember Serrano. All those in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Same sign. And it's approved unanimously. Thank you for that. And we move on to item 10 on our agenda, new business. It looks like there's none. Item 11, miscellaneous discussion. Do we have any miscellaneous discussion? Dave?
I did have a few items. I'd asked Chief here to update us on the COVID testing site. Matter of fact, I had the opportunity to go by there this morning. They had over 800 folks go into there today for testing, one of their biggest days. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to the Chief. He's going to give you a little bit of an idea of what's been happening out there over the last few weeks.
Well, you're right, Dave. The test site did 800, actually a little over 800, 801 sites today, or tests today. It continues to go extraordinary. The number of people that are coming through there, they're moving to 7-day-a-week testing because Mondays and Thursdays, when they have been closed on Tuesday, Wednesdays, were causing a huge backup on Argent. I think what's important is that, you know, people are concerned about testing, but the issue is not testing, it's a percent per positive. And if we don't test, and you test 100 people or 1,000 people, what's your percent positive? And that's what the test site has to produce. And we have to reduce our percent positive in this community. We're still running 14 to 15% positive, which is a real high number. And the state runs about the rest of the state before the last 2 weeks has run 2 to 3% positive. So that's what we have to reduce. And the only way you reduce that is testing and contact tracing. And our health department here has a very strong contact tracing going on. So it's going really well. I am very happy that we have this test site here, and hopefully we can continue to do this and get funding for it in the next few months. So with that, any other questions?
This is Councilmember Alvarado. I did have a question about the site. I went there before the spike, and it took me less than 10 minutes to go through the whole process, which was pretty amazing. Really didn't take much of it. And what I've been doing is kind of been testing kind of more routinely, not all the time, but just every now and then, just to make sure. What's the wait like now that we're a lot busier?
The average wait time right now is still running under 15 minutes. There are days that they're higher than that, and that's an average. So that means 50% of the people are running under 15 minutes. The wait time is still really good, Councilman, and going to 7 days a week, what they're hoping is that they can reduce that or level that out because the Monday before they're closed and the Thursday after they open are where we have the higher wait times. And now they're going to go to 7 day a week staffing. And hopefully that will level out that wait time and keep it down into the 15, 20 minute time range. And then have and now we're going to start sending samples to the UW twice a day. We're going to send samples at 12 o'clock and samples at 4:30 so that we can get those times down in less time.
Thank you, Chief Gear. I just want to commend your leadership and foresight. When I went, it's like, where's everybody? But it certainly is very needed right now, and so I appreciate that leadership.
Thank you, Chief. I'll mention that this morning, my own personal experience, and I was just a couple of cars from being backed up to the driveway, and it took me about 28 minutes. So even when the line's really long, you really get through there pretty quickly. There's four test sites at that site, so they're taking 4 carloads at a time. Also asked Director Sigdell to talk a little bit about our utility assistance and delinquencies update. And turn it over to you, Rita.
This is Councilmember Maloney. Before we leave this topic, I had one question for the chief. We had a fixed contract with Department of Health, or not Department of Health, the Health District. Now that we're going to expanded operations as we're seeing, I imagine that we're going to need to see an extension and an increase in their overall contract value. How are we doing on that side of things?
Well, we know what we call our burn rate, how much we're spending in a week is about 40,000. We've spent about 260,000 to date out of a $1.1 million contract. We're paying a lot of attention to that. We're hoping that contract gets extended into the next year. But economically, I think we did a good job of overestimating the costs and underestimating our expenses, and we're in good shape. We have a finance person that's monitoring that weekly. Like I said, our weekly burn rate is about 40,000, which is a little less than what we'd anticipated. So we're okay with that. And we're talking to them about how that's going to be extended into the next year, and then how that's going to be extended into vaccinating about 50% of the people who want to be vaccinated. When you just look at that in Pasco, that would be 40,000 vaccinations alone.
Excellent. Chief Gary, thank you so much. And I'll certainly say, rather than suggesting that you did a good job by overestimating, I would much rather suggest that you have been able to run a much more efficient operation than expected. You should talk to Mr. Worley about that, about the right words to use. Thanks.
Thank you,
This is
Councilmember
Well,
Maloney.
we're trying to do the right thing and I will say to council, you may get people that comment back to you about testing. And testing is a relative thing. When we look at metrics, whether you test 100 people or 1,000 people, what we look at, what everybody looks at in the state and what we look at locally is what is the positivity rate. And that's what we have to get down. Not how many people we test, but how many people test positive. And that shows whether we're controlling the spread or the spread's out of control. And it doesn't make any difference. If we test 3 or 4 or 5, 6, 7,000 in this community, what is the positivity rate? And that's what we have to control. And the only way you control that is testing people and then doing contact tracing.
Thank you, Chief Gear. This is Councilmember Roach, and I appreciate you saying that, and I think we're gonna have to keep saying that until we're blue in the face, because no matter how many times the information is out there for people in various ways, that's the thing I continuously hear is that, well, if you test more, then you get more positive cases. And, so I guess maybe one day they'll hear the message, but out of curiosity, can you tell us what is the positivity rate in our county?
It's 14%. It's run 14% consistently since we started. But I'm encouraged by the fact that when we compare the Benton County to Franklin County number of positives, we're seeing a decline. Franklin County ran half the population and almost the same or more numbers of positive rates to Benton County for months through the summer. And now we're seeing that go down. I think we're testing a lot more Benton County people in relationship to the Franklin County people in relation to Benton County. And I think that's going down. I think we're doing a good job here in Franklin County. And I think what I'm hearing is Benton County is asking, how do we get some more test sites here? And which is interesting because we're actually testing twice as many Benton County people as Franklin. So there's all kinds of screwy numbers that we have to put together over the last couple of weeks. But I think we're doing a good job. I think we have to encourage people. The election is going to influence some people's decisions about testing versus non-testing. And I hope we get through that in the next couple of weeks as that calms down. But testing and contact tracing is really important. But I will give you a little personal history. Nationally, as many of you know, I worked for 2 weeks in a command center in Redding, California, where 9 people tested positive. I had 1 call from 1 county health department of the 9 people that tested positive. None of the 8 other county health departments called me, including Multnomah County, which is Portland. Never got a call from any of them. So contact tracing is not that good. And that's a sad thing because testing equals contact tracing equals isolating people. So we still have some problems in America.
Definitely. Thank you for that, Chief
Probably
Kier.
should be my end of report.
Thank you again. Do we have any other questions or comments for Chief Kier? All right, and with that, Dave, do we have a need for executive session?
Well, I was going to have Richa, Mayor, I was going to have Richa talk a little bit about
That is,
our utility assistance.
yes, sorry,
experience.
we got a little sidetracked there. I apologize, Director Richa.
And of course, Mayor Pro Tem, evening, I will be very short. Wanted to give you all an update on our utility assistance grant. Council allocated $400,000 to assist our utility customers within the city of Pasco with any delinquent utility bills for up to 6 months. About 3 weeks ago, at this point, we are looking at about almost 185 applications that have been received. We have given out $10,000, a little bit over $10,000 in assistance so far. And in this process, we've been trying to reach out to as many of our customers who need this help. And we've been doing that via tagging their doors. And so, because we found that sometimes phone calls, especially when we say you can get a grant, sounds like a scam, or letters, people usually do not check their mail on a regular basis. Or even emails. So we have actually tagged their doors and to communicate with them that there's this grant available. We've sent letters to anyone who has a different mailing address than the service address itself. We've made over 500 contacts via phone calls, informing the customers who we assume will qualify as they have delinquent bills. And then we're now starting on the robocalls, which would be just the automated phone calls. We're also, big thanks to our communications program manager, John Funfar. He's been doing Facebook posts and news releases to the press. And then we've also spoken with some of our media partners, giving them more information on the program itself. So we are continuing to reach out. The end date for all of our customers and viewers who are watching is November 30th. And please reach out to us if you have a need. And we have all sorts of information about the program on our website, or you can just call the city and we will help you through the process. In that same vein, we have mentioned in the past that the utility there's been a high delinquency in utility over the last year. And currently, just in this reach out process with our customers, we've been able to actually bring down the delinquency amount significantly. And at this point, bills that are delinquent over 60 days is about $310,000, which is still quite high compared to our normal operation. But a number that has gone down significantly in the last month. End of report. And I'm here if you have any questions.
Thank you, Director Sigdell. Do we have any questions for Director Sigdell? Hearing none. Dave, do we have need for executive session?
We do not, but I do have just a couple more items.
Sure.
So I reach staffs have a little bit of a habit of underselling themselves a little bit tonight, but yeah, that number Richa was talking about, the delinquency number, if I recall right, was about $565,000. And so it's staff, I think, has done a great job of working with our customers, just talking to them, explaining options, working out payment plans, and they've really been able to get that number down, which is going to help a lot because that number is not going to go away for our customers. And, we're finding out that COVID isn't going to go away quite so easy either. Our numbers are up, and one of the other things I wanted to talk about was the governor's order. We're certainly responding to that at the staff level. You heard Director Ratkai talk a little bit about it tonight, how that impacts some of our options, how it impacted some of our options regarding the fireworks piece. Certainly it's going to impact all of our businesses and the families and people whose jobs depend on those businesses. it's a huge impact for our city. And even from a budget standpoint, not that budget hearings are typically clamoring with people wanting to testify, but you know, the isolation or the disconnect that we have because of virtual meetings and so forth, generally we have a few folks that want to weigh in on the budget, and frankly, that was kind of missed tonight. And I know council's feeling it as well. So we'll continue to work through this thing. I did want to note that there's an effort among some of the local agencies, the cities and counties, among some of the electives on a letter, certainly acknowledging the governor's restrictions and the reasons for them and the need for them, but also encouraging to really consider particularly business community and the fact that those places have done a lot to try to install safety precautions and enforce masks and social distancing and really heightened up their overall housekeeping and sanitation efforts. So it's a tough balance. I'm sure all of us are glad none of us are the governor tonight. Those are tough decisions to have to make, particularly when people's health and perhaps their very lives weigh in the balance. So just a couple of comments on that. And then along those lines, I also want to mention Mid-Columbia Library has reached out to us today, and they've had to retract back a little bit, but they still continue to be open for curbside service. And they wanted me to make sure that council was aware of that as well. So that's all I had for this evening.
Thank you, Dave. Well, there's no need for executive session, and if there are no other comments by any of our council members, then this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone, and have a good evening. Stay safe.
Bye-bye.